We're here at the introductory press conference for Mel Tucker, 26th head football coach in program history. He said, Brian, this is a no excuses program as of right now.
As of right now, it had not been that way late in the year, but yeah, no excuses program, and you like the attitude. I mean, obviously, this is kind of like signing day. I don't know if we've ever seen an introductory press conference that there wasn't a lot of excitement about, but I like his energy and I like the message that he has, and I think this fan base and this team needs a no excuses attitude, and to go out there and just go play football and be tough and physical, and not worry about, hey, if guys get hurt, let's go.
Yeah, to your point, games are not won or lost based on an introductory press conference. But the one thing I'm always leery of is if you go into an intro press conference and there's a lot of salesmanship. It was more Mel Tucker just kind of talking about his values. He didn't seem to have kind of that snake oil salesman vibe to him. He seems like a very straight and forward type person.
Yeah, there was no like PowerPoint presentation or bullet list. I mean, he had like about a half sheet of paper and then was winging it most of the time. And yeah, I agree with you. There was that sense that was just him talking. That wasn't really a salesmanship. That was just, hey, here's who I am, here's who I've been, and this is what I want Colorado to be. And I think that you got to like that message out of him, and hopefully that translates to wins on the field.
He talks about, this is going to be a championship level program, and talked about very detailed exactly how this football program is going to be under his watch. Obviously easier said than done.
Yeah.
For them to accomplish all that he laid forth today, that's a big challenge he set himself up for.
It is. I mean, you've got to talk that way. I mean, you've got to point for championships and things like that. But realistically, if he just gets to 7-5 next year, then I think people are going to be really happy. And if he can get this team to compete for a South championship, on an annual basis, or every once in a while, then I think that's going to be a good thing for this program. They just got to get to bowl games and the national championship, things like that. Those are nice dreams. You want to shoot for that, but right now, that's not what this program should aspire to in 2019. I think just get to bowl games every year.
It was an interesting coaching search to cover because a lot of the leaks were coming out on the Georgia end. Mm-hmm. Mel Tucker fired his agent, Jimmy Sexton, a power agent that seems to be the agent for most of these college coaches. Mm-hmm. He fires him, and that's when these leaks just magically started happening out there in Athens.
Yeah, isn't that amazing how that happens? It's always interesting covering a coaching search, and there's not a whole lot of people talking, and I give Rick and Lance and the administration here credit because they said from the beginning, hey, we're going to be closed down on this, and they really were. I mean, it was hard to get much out of them from their end, but boy, once the name Mel Tucker hit, I think it was late Friday night, then things just kind of ballooned from there. So it was pretty clear at that point it was him.
Among the rumor candidates that were out there, Brian, what's your opinion on this hire for Colorado?
I think it's one that, I think initially, at least my initial list, and when I think back to the initial list that came out when Mike McIntyre was fired, I don't remember Mel Tucker's name being on that list, or on many people's lists. So right. I think it's one that, once his name came out last Friday, I bet a lot of CU fans were like, who is this guy? And trying to read up more about him. There was a lot of talk initially of Ryan Day, Jimmy Lake, guys that people knew about, Jim Levitt, things like that, Matt Wells, guys that made more sense. This is one that ultimately I think it makes a lot of sense, but it's not one that was on the radar really because he doesn't have the ties to the West, and there's not those ties to CU. But my sense is that a lot of people looked him up late Friday night and Saturday, like, okay, I like this guy. Then they watched his defense against Alabama for a while. They're like, yeah, I like this guy.
Well, there's concern, okay, he doesn't have those ties out here. How tough is it going to be as a recruiter? As long as he rounds out a staff with coaches that have those ties in high schools, in Texas, in California, he says he wants to recruit nationally, a Quan Drake if he stays on board in Louisiana. You're fine there. A head coach's job is to be the closer, to be the guy that goes in the living room, that on official visits, unofficial visits, sits down with these recruits and really connects with them. Yeah. They're really not the guys laying the groundwork, so it is imperative on him to have a staff with those connections, but it's not a huge deal that he doesn't personally have them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think, to me, my opinion is if you can recruit, you can recruit. Whether it's in the East or the South or the West or whatever. I think that if you can recruit, you can get it done. And I've heard people say, well, it's easy to recruit to Georgia, and you could speak better to this, but in my opinion, how easy is it really when you've got top players in Georgia that you're having to fight off Alabama, Clemson, Florida, teams like that? I don't know if it's that easy as opposed to
it's easier when you're winning, obviously.
Yeah, it's but when he first got there, their first year, they were 8-5, and they were not like that national contending type of team. So, so certainly it's easier when you're winning, but I'm not sure it's necessarily the easiest thing to recruit to a place like Georgia. So, I just think if you're a recruiter, you can recruit.
I did have one of the Georgia writers say the fact that he went down into South Florida, they had not done that successfully at Georgia a lot until he went down there, had a lot of success. So he definitely has that closer ability. I was asked an interesting question yesterday about the fact that Mel Tucker has been in all these prestigious programs.
Yeah.
He might come here, and obviously the facilities are top-notch, but from a fan base support, if you're not winning, it's not there, then it might be a culture shock. But in my opinion, it's better to have a guy in that tries to set these high expectations, because it sounds corny, but if you can't dream it, you can't achieve it.
Yeah.
One problem with Mike McIntyre coming in here is that, again, there were excuses a lot of the time. It was about, okay, we can't accomplish this because of this.
Yeah.
Mel Tucker, he's going to face some of that, but he's going to kind of attack it head on.
Yeah, and I think there's big difference. We've said it before. I think Mike McIntyre did a good job here, and is good at turning programs around. He did a great job at San Jose State. He did a really good job here for the first several years. And but you look at his history. There's not a whole lot of, to my knowledge, he hasn't won national championships. And Mel's a guy that has worked at Alabama. He's worked at Georgia. He's worked at Ohio State. He played in a Rose Bowl at Wisconsin. So this is a guy that actually has experience and knows what it's like to get to that level. And I think that speaks volumes. I think that a guy like that can come in here and instill that type of thing in this program.
There's some quality assistants that were on McIntyre's staff. I'd be surprised if 3 or 4 of those guys aren't retained. Mel Tucker can call the defense if he wants to.
Yeah.
The big question at this point is who's going to call the plays in 2019.
Yeah, and right now we certainly don't know that. And I think that if I had to guess, I think that Darren Chiaverini would be a part of this staff, but not necessarily as a play caller. I don't know, whether he'd be given that role again after some struggles this year. But yeah, if I had to look at the staff, I would probably say Chiaverini and Hagan are probably my top 2 that I would bet on still being here. You look at guys like Kurt Roper, who the players love, Steven Montez loves, Ross Ells, guys like that. Quan Drake, I think, with the job he did. Those are guys I would look at and say, okay, maybe those guys can be here.
And Shadon Brown has recruited a lot of defensive backs here as well. So, again, he's got to really sit down and get to know these guys. But I think there's some really quality coaches on the staff. And then recruiting, he's got a very short period of time. They're going to have their in-state commitments on campus this weekend, and that following weekend, the 14th, that is going to be one of the biggest recruiting weekends in a long time. It'll be interesting to see how he approaches this. Does Mel Tucker, with some of the guys he's had relationships with 2019 recruits, does he try to bring them here? Or there's a very short period of time until that early signing period, less than 2 weeks until that begins.
Yeah, there really is, but I think that CU at this point is probably trying to capitalize on the excitement of this whole thing, and I think that if they can do that, then this could be a great way that they finish the recruiting season, and maybe they do capitalize on that and finish strong.
We don't know if practices are going to be open, all the policies with the new coach, so it's going to be a feeling out process for us as well. But day one, good vibes from what you gathered here? Yeah,
I think so, and to your point, I think that I'm curious to find out what's going to happen as far as not only practices, but one of the Georgia beat writers I talked to said, we don't really know Mel that well because we haven't been allowed to talk to assistants a whole lot. So I'm curious, how that's going to change things like that too. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But day one, I think he did a pretty good job, and I think they always say here won the press conference. I would guess I say he won the press conference.
All right, Mel Tucker, Colorado's new head coach.